Welcome to CebsarTalk. I am Evans Apia Kisi, the host of CebsarTalk. CebSar is Center for Better Society Advocacy and Research Africa. CebSar Africa is a non-profit organization that believes in a better society for all. We in CebSar Africa believe that a better society begins with you and I. Hashtag, a better society begins with me. For more information, please log on to www.cebsarafrica.org. Please follow us on the various social media platforms: YouTube, CebsarTalk, Facebook at Cebsar Africa, Instagram, Cebsar Africa, and Twitter, Cebsar Africa. Like always, today we bring you another interesting discussion on the topic African Continental Free Trade Agreement, what it presents and the opportunities. On 1st March 2018, 44 African countries signed an agreement to establish the African Continental Free Trade Agreement. On 1st of January 2021, AfCFTA became the world's largest trading area in terms of the number of participating countries. The main objective of AfCFTA is to eliminate barriers to trade by providing a single market amongst the 54 countries that have signed the agreement. Beyond trading goods and services, AfCFTA is positioned to facilitate the movement of people across Africa easily. And in this episode of CebsarTalk, we discuss the implementation and benefits of AfCFTA in areas such as trade governance and agriculture. And to help us deal with such an important issue are Ms. Harriet Akwa. She's currently a realtor in luxury real estate market in Ghana. She's a former field engineer at Baker Hughes Ghana Limited, now Baker Hughes GE Company. She's also a former senior mechanical engineer at Amec Foster Wheeler. She holds Bachelor of Science in Mechanical Engineering from the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology, Ghana. She also has certificate in Women Entrepreneurship and Leadership for African Program. I must say it's a pleasure to host you once again. Welcome to CebsarTalk, Harriet. If you could unmute your audio for us.
Thank you, Evans. Good to see you again.
Yeah, good to see you. And our next guest is Mr. David Ofosu Dorothy. He's currently a senior partner of AB and David Africa, a Pan-Africa business law firm. He holds master's degree in public administration and in applied business research. He's also a fellow of the Chartered Institute of Logistics and Transport, United Kingdom. He's a co-author of the recently published AfCFTA Year Zero report on country commitment and readiness for the AfCFTA. Thank you very much, sir. I must say it's a pleasure to host you. Welcome to CebsarTalk, David.
Thank you.
Great. And I call them to our fellow Cebsarians and those of you also joining us via Zoom. We say a very big thank you to you for your time, as well as our guest here. Thanks for making time for us. I know we are a bit behind time. We are also streaming live on Facebook, and so please don't forget to keep your questions coming, your comments coming, whatever that you would want to know as far as this African Continental Free Trade Agreement is concerned will be answered here. So let me say thank you to CebsarTalk, Harriet and David.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I would like to start with you, David, and if you could briefly explain to our audience the structure of this agreement. I mean, how the movement of goods and services, as well as persons, like in this agreement.
Thank you. I think we have to position the AfCFTA itself within the larger agenda of the African Union, which is the Agenda 2063. And the idea of the African Union is to create what has been called Africa we want. We all know that as Africans, we keep criticizing our leaders regarding their inability to make Africa take its right place among the community of nations. And what the AU has done is to set out a series of items in its agenda to attain these goals that we all want. And collectively, it's called Agenda 2063. And it includes many things, the idea of a single air transport market, which touches on the movement you are talking about, cross-border infrastructure to link Africa. So you see, for example, the proposed Cairo to Cape Town road, and then Djibouti to Dakar railway connection, infrastructure regarding power, for example, the potential creation of the Grand Inga, which is the Congo Dam that can power more than half the continent, the creation of a single African passport, and many others. Now, among these major agenda items is the AfCFTA. So the AfCFTA itself is part or an agenda item within Agenda 2063. It has gained so much prominence because for the first time, it is perhaps the only agenda that brings private sector and everybody on board. And the private sector interest, because of the trade elements, is what has made it more popular. So we kind of singled it out as the major agenda, but it is part of the Agenda 2063. Its structure is, I should say, very detailed and well structured, but for the want of time, I will just make it short. So, among other things, there is a Council of Ministers, which is the Council of Ministers of Trade and Industry across the continent, who, as it were, have the responsibility to ensure that the AfCFTA or the AfTA is shaped. And the number of things that they have done, which have been approved by the heads of states at the summit and the assembly, is what has led to the creation of AfTA as we have it now. But also within that structure is the Committee of Senior Trade Officials, whose duty is to implement the decisions that is made by the Council of Ministers and the Assembly. So when the heads of states meet and they endorse the decisions of the Council of Ministers, the senior trade officials are to implement it. Then the most significant body or set of institutional structure is the Secretariat itself, which incidentally is now hosted in Ghana. Now that Secretariat is an autonomous body, even though within the structure of the African Union. And it's autonomous in terms of functionality. And the whole idea is to implement the AfTA in its entirety. So it has its own legal structure, it has its own legal personality, and it's independent, even though it comes within the AU Commission. And among its functions include the removal of non-tariff barriers, which will again facilitate the movement of goods and services, which we talked about in the opening. The other institutional framework worth mentioning alongside the Secretariat is the Africa Trade Observatory, which, as it were, monitors the movement of goods and services across the continent and look at the value chain. And I think I must mention one more, which is the Africa Standards Organization, which will be one of the entities that will check whether or not goods being produced and exported across the continent meet the standards, which will enable mutually recognized acceptance of goods among the countries. So these are just but a sample of the structure. And I must say, as of my last check, out of the 55 African countries, many people keep talking about 54. And they forget that the Arab Sahrawi Republic is a country which is recognized within the AU. So out of the 55 countries, 54 have signed. Eritrea is the only country which has not signed, and 38 have ratified. Now, the minimum number that was required for it to be operational was 22, but 38 have ratified. So this is quite much, much bigger than the EU started with. And that's, in general, sums up how it looks like. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I mean, just quickly, with regard to the ratification, you said 38 have ratified so far. Do we have any I mean, no disrespect to any country, but we have any key countries with large economies that have not signed? I mean, the likes of Nigeria, South Africa. We have any
They have all ratified. Nigeria, both Nigeria and South Africa have all ratified. The ratification is ongoing. I think the 39th country which had ratified, to the best of my recollection recently, was Zambia, but which had not deposited this instrument. I need to confirm that. But in terms of the big economies, all of them have ratified. So I think we are fine.
And then maybe just a last follow-up question also. You talked about these wonderful structures that have been put in place, particularly the one with the standards organization. Do you think that countries are prepared to implement some of these standards as and when they come?
I think the issue is not the implementation of the standards. The issue is whether countries are ready to mutually recognize the standards of goods which are exported into their territory by each other. So standards become mutually recognizable. And that is why the Africa Standards Organization is a very, very key, as it were, body to ensure that the AfCFTA works perfectly. So having said that, what we need to recognize is that if I'm exporting goods into another territory, the rules of origin will apply, whether or not the goods are actually originating from Africa, and there are various standards and indices which are being negotiated to, as it were, to make the rules of origin complete. But even if the goods originate from Africa or meet the standards of the rules of origin, you nevertheless have to ensure that it meets the standards which is accepted by the country to which the goods is being exported. And that is why the Africa Standards Organization, or ASO, become very key. As to the readiness of countries on this, that's a totally different question. And let me just point out that even before AfCFTA, one of the requirements of the AU in preparation was to require every country to put in place what is called a BIAT, that is the Boosting Intra-Africa Trade strategy. Now, each country is supposed to have that, which was to lead to the increase in intra-Africa trade and will actually make it grow faster when the AfCFTA comes into force. I think there is something that I keep mentioning anytime I have had to speak on this topic, that until COVID, the intra-Africa trade was growing by itself, even before AfCFTA was signed. It had reached 18% by the time the AfCFTA was signed in March in Kigali. So I'm very confident about the fact that the AfCFTA will succeed. But the readiness of countries depend on the country's strategy under the BIAT. Countries like Gabon, Rwanda, Ghana, to the best of my knowledge, have prepared their strategy or are in the process of during their strategies. Some of them have not officially announced it, but are nevertheless strategizing. So it depends on the country's strategy and its ability to decide that they see the AfCFTA as a trigger for its own economic growth.
Thank you very much, David. So now I come to you, Harriet. I mean, David talks a lot about some of the importance of this agreement. Particularly, he even compares us to the EU in terms of ratification. Within such a short time, we have 38 countries that have ratified. Some countries are working on their BIAT and the likes. Do you foresee, and he also just mentioned that even before COVID, after, trade, intra-African trade was on the increase, so 17, some quoted at 18%. How do you see the AfTA to be able to help improve this intra-African trade? Some are hoping that in the next year, 2 years, maybe trade would increase or would double or even triple. How do you see that happening as far as this agreement is concerned? And in addition, what are other benefits that we are likely to have as a continent?
Evans, I think that is what everybody wants to know. Actually, it's a very good question. As David says, this is actually the biggest after WTO, actually. And this is a continent of about 1.2, 1.3 billion people. So that's quite a huge number. So being able to access such a huge number is a big deal for individual countries as well as the whole African continent. And we have been trading less with ourselves and more with the rest of the world. As you rightly mentioned, we've just traded about 17 to 18%. Actually, it could be about 15%. That was the number I know, but it's in that region. And most of our export goes outside the continent. And unfortunately, we only contribute 3% to global trade because we tend to export more of our raw materials. There's no value added to it. So basically, we've been losing on both sides, both intra-Africa and as well as on the global stage. So I think this AfCFTA program is a timely program to change the narrative of how we can, how we can associate and interact with each other more and also benefit within ourselves. I always say that nobody is going to do it, but we, Africa, have to do it for ourselves. So looking at a combined GDP of about $3 trillion, we have something to start with. And how is AfCFTA going to help us get us to trade more with ourselves? Now, this policy was drafted somewhere in 2017. And at that time, it was projected that AfCFTA will help increase trade by some 52.3% by the year 2022. But I doubt that number right now because of the COVID issues and every country is not dealing with this COVID pandemic. But then that is what has been projected as of 2017. Now, if we look at some of the barriers that we have, like communication, infrastructure, tariffs, those are the areas that AfCFTA seeks to address and possibly eliminate so that we have a homogeneous market to do the trade. And so looking at some of the studies that have been done by the UN Economic Commission for Africa, that's UNECA, they are projecting that by 2014, trade for industrial products would have increased for between 25 to 30%. And for agric and food products, it will increase between 20 to 30%. And for energy and mining, between 5 and 11%. Now, how they seek to do that, as I mentioned, is a trade, right? So reducing the trade costs and import prices by 90%. Of course, for the least growth companies or these economic companies, communities, weaker economies, they are given a little bit of room so that they don't collapse, so to say, under this AfCFTA, so they don't have the bigger economies, trying to overtake their market as well. So there's some kind of buffer. So instead of 90%, they are allowed to maybe save some products, maybe keep the tariffs on those products for a longer period so that it gives them time to boost and grow their economy before they can actually reduce their tariffs to 90%. And also what the AfCFTA program seeks to do is by reducing the tariffs, what it seeks to do is that it gives the consumer a wider range of products to get access to. And that also brings competition amongst the companies involved. And that will also produce or will create innovation. And that is very, very important. David was talking about standard of products and services. It's not only product, but also services. So at the end of the day, you want to create that kind of healthy competition and have that kind of innovation going. And that will also increase or improve the economies of the individual countries, right? And secondly, as I said, with innovation comes what the domestic or the local economy is growing. And that is very, very important, especially for even the smaller economies in Africa. So there are a lot of potentials that come with this terrain. When you have reduced tariffs as well, it's also going to affect the cost of the raw materials for importing companies. So with lower cost for raw materials, that will also affect the output, right? And all these are also things that the AfCFTA seeks to produce to provide. Another challenge that Africa has been facing is got to do with the regional economic communities. There are some countries in certain parts of the continent that are involved in multiple multiple RECs, right? And that is actually affecting their growth because there are some misalignment with some of the RECs that they belong to, and that hinders their progress. So AfCFTA is trying to eliminate those RECs so that we have a homogeneous market and policy that we can all plug into as a continent. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Harriet. So amongst others, you highlight brilliant points out there. Some of the benefits would include, of course, improvement in competition leading to innovation, and also easy access to, I would say, locally driven goods and services. But maybe just a follow-up question. Should we also be worried of any, I don't know if I'm right with the terminology, like trade wars? We know the main purpose, as you said, the main benefit would be to increase intra-African trade. What then happens to our trade with other regions like the EU, the US? What could be a possible consequence of that?
I always say there's strength in numbers, right? And that is, David made a point about when will there be time for Africa to do something for Africa? And over the years, we've been wondering how can we come together so that we can actually negotiate better on the global stage. So AfCFTA give us the platform to do that, right? So we go in with a united front and we are able to negotiate better with either EU or with North America or with Asia. And that we are seeking, or we can seek a common interest that would be beneficial to Africa. And the time, I pray that if this is executed well, then we have a new era where African leaders and the African economies will be able to negotiate better for the benefit of Africa. And that is a great platform to do that.
Great. Thank you very much, Harriet. So I come to you again, David, and of course, feel free to add to what Harriet also said. But there's a question here from one of our participants, Samje Oswald, and he says that the creation of AfCFTA is a grand project. Where along the infrastructural design does the boosting intra-African trade force today? So that I want to add on to his question that what are some of the challenges? You already mentioned that the BIAT is a major challenge as we speak. To the best of your knowledge, about only 4 countries have been able to implement that. But addressing his question together, what are other challenges that we foresee in the implementation or in a successful implementation of such a wonderful agreement?
Okay, let me correct that. The BIAT, not 4 countries have been implemented. What I'm saying is that 4 countries I know have publicly made mention of the fact that they are implementing DS or are during DS. But I think with UNECA alone, there were about 14 countries which UNECA was assisting to let them, as it were, work on their BIAT. So there are many countries. It is mandatory for each country to do it. So I think many more countries will do it. We're talking about challenges, just adding to what Harriet has said, or rather emphasizing, infrastructure is very key. You cannot move goods or services without infrastructure. And I think one of the biggest challenges of Africa, as we all know, is the movement and the interconnection. I did mention that under Agenda 2063, there were major projects envisaged. But you will notice that each of the RECs, which Harriet alluded to, has already had within its sub-region attempts to overcome the infrastructure. East Africa is very much well advanced in terms of interconnection. If you take West Africa as an example, you will find that Nigeria all through to Ghana already have a gas pipeline, which is part of infrastructure. And that's how we are able to also, as it were, do power projects. But then there is a Trans-West African Highway, as an example, which connects all the way through Cote d'Ivoire to Senegal. It's not been fully done. I talked about the Djibouti to Dakar Railway, which is in the books, the 6,000 kilometer Cairo to Cape Town. And you'll be surprised to find out that of the 6,000 kilometer interconnection from Cairo to Cape Town, only 2,000 kilometers is actually not already interconnected. In other words, if we work hard, we can actually open it up. And a lot of projects are in the offing. I mean, I do a lot of infrastructure work across the continent. And I can say, for example, that there are 2 projects upcoming in Southern Africa, which is likely to connect Zambia to Malawi, Zambia to Congo DR, and which will enable movement of goods by roads, and will eventually link the Trans-African project. One thing when it comes to infrastructure that is worth mentioning is an organization called PIDA, which has already, is part of the units of the AU, which has already studied the entire infrastructure across the continent into detail. The challenge which we need to overcome is taking these things to the market and making it bankable for people to be able to fund these projects. So that's one of the challenges I will add to that of Harriet. And then most important, the issue about movement of people, visa. I mean, West Africa, no need to go to take a visa to each other's country. But what if I'm going to South Africa? You will see that whereas AfCFTA have had as much as 38 countries ratifying it, when it comes to the free movement, the ratification is low. It's even worse when it comes to the single air transport market, which is being developed, that's also facing its own challenges. The good thing is that AU has got champions for each of these sectors. We need only 15 countries to ratify the single air transport market. My last check, we had only 8. I think what entities like CEBSAR and all the Africans have to do is to continue pushing for us to overcome these challenges. And I want to emphasize one point. The AfCFTA is nothing more than the heads of states recognizing what the ordinary citizens are already doing. And if I want to use Ghana example, I talk about this all the time. Agushi is traded between Ghana and Nigeria. And these are simple things we overlook. Tomatoes and plantain cross between Cote d'Ivoire and Ghana. Eggs are traded already between Togo, Benin. And some of these things don't even get recorded in the basket of goods that we talk about. So the ordinary people are trading. I know young Africans who are exporting across the continent without CFTA. If we keep pushing our leaders, they will act faster and remove some of these non-tariff trade barriers, which actually are the stumbling blocks. I think the people are ready to trade. That's how I see it. Yeah.
Brilliant point out there. Thank you very much. Actually, I was going to ask about, I'll come to you, Harriet, a minute, please. Okay. I was actually going to ask you about the movement of people, but I think my question has been summed up here by Samje Oswald Babila again. He says, why can't the regional economy bodies be inculcated into, after as per the role stated in their constitution, to help enhance borderless economy in Africa? I think
that's the idea. Yeah, that's the idea, actually. The idea is for the RECs to act as centers and then gradually move into the bigger integration, which is why I gave the example of the East Africa community, which already, if you take Uganda's oil and gas, for example, already it is being designed as an East Africa pipeline project. The road network between Mombasa going all the way to Dar es Salaam. So, and you take West Africa, the idea, hopefully, is that ECOWAS, for example, may end up becoming the center for resolution of disputes under the AfCFTA. So yes, the RECs may become the center. There are challenges, but let me say this to that point, and I'll conclude there. We should not be, as it were, dumping, aspiration not be dampened by the challenges. And I'll just give 2 examples. United States of America as a country started with 6 states. We've got 51 now. The European Union, which started actually among steel companies, also started with only 6. Today you have 27 countries. Sure. Those who have ratified, who are, aggressive about it, should simply go ahead. the others will follow. I'm a strong believer in that.
I think I'm also a believer in that. Hopefully, I think we'll get there with such huge numbers ratifying at such. But one of the things you said, which, sorry, I still want to get your thoughts on that, is one way to push for this borderless economy, if I can put it that way, would be, you say it's more advocacy, right? To kind of encourage heads of states to be able to do that. All right.
It's not just that.
Mm.
We try to wait for the big things. Each of us have a role to play. I know two people, one exports shea butter across the continent already. And there is a group in Southern Africa which is seeking to brand these products for the Southern African market. I know somebody who exports kente from Ghana across the continent. I've already given examples of Gucci and all the rest. And if I come to services, my law firm, I mean, I don't want to personalize this. We are in 6 countries. We just got an affiliate in Kenya, and we launched our Kenya office last week. So if we do these things ourselves, that is when we will have a bigger voice to push. We should stop thinking, I mean, I tweet a lot, and I tweeted the other day that we should stop calling ourselves Nigerians, Ghanaians, Zambians. I call myself an African from Ghana, an African from Zambia. It's a different way to push it. That way, it makes the AU push quickly for the African passport, which is one of the key things we need in order to make free movement easy. So we all have a role to play in our little way.
Thank you very much. So Harriet, back to you also with challenges. What do you have to say?
Yeah, David has said much of what I wanted to say as well. And but there's one key thing that I would like to add, and that is the institution of the competition law. And this is to prevent a company to monopolize the system. So for instance, if you look at a country like Egypt, they are well versed in cotton production. You don't want a big company in Egypt to come and collapse your cotton company or industry in Ghana, for instance. So we need that competition law instituted so that you have a healthy, competition, so that you don't have a monopolization of the market. And that is very, very important for all the individual countries in Africa to do that. There are some African countries that have done that. Kenya has done that, Egypt, Zambia, Gabon, they've all done that. Ghana, we don't have it yet. And we need to have that so that we have a healthy balance and a healthy trade across regions.
Thank you very much, Harriet. I don't know, maybe to you and David, I'll start with you. We've also heard about some challenges with regard to dumping and also border security issues. How is this of concern to this agreement, issues of dumping and issues of border security, and how do we go around it? Harriet.
Yes. All right. I thought that question was for David.
Yeah. If you could.
Actually, this is actually have been one of the main concerns. I think Nigeria took quite a while to ratify because of that issue, right? So this is one of the areas that AfCFTA really needs to look at. That is why I said we need standardization. We need those policies in place to prevent that from happening. And of course, you don't want a situation where less or more inferior products to be dumped into your country as an unhealthy competition with your quality products within your region or within the country. So there has to be policies to look into all these things and to iron that out so that all the individual countries involved will have to play by the rules.
Let me add, I think there are a number of things that can help reduce the impact of this. And I must commend the negotiators of the AfCFTA, even though it's taking long and some of the negotiations are ongoing and some of us are always criticizing for the delay. I think they've done quite a good job to combat this. So if you take the structure of, first and foremost, the number of goods that will be traded. The AU and the negotiators have identified 5,000 goods which are traded across the continent, which will, as it were, be within the basket of goods to be traded. Of these 5,000 goods, there is a 90% that each country can select on its own to put in this basket, as it were. Then there is the 7% where you can put restrictions on it and some barriers, both tariff and non-tariff. And then there is a 3% which will be, for want of a better word, no-go area, as we call it in Ghana. But you will see that one of the emerging issues in the negotiations is that even if you wanted to include some particular item in the exclusive area, you cannot do so if you are substantially importing that item, which, for example, may explain why Nigeria banned import of rice from Benin, because the amount of import from rice from Benin was significant, and the belief was that these were goods which were being shipped from other countries, channeled through Benin and entering Nigeria. And therefore, if Nigeria couldn't show, and Nigeria grows substantial amount of rice, if Nigeria wanted to protect its rice and it ratified the CFTA, it cannot add rice to the restricted areas because it was substantially importing it. So I believe that ban of import of goods of rice has put Nigeria in a better advantageous position to be able to say rice is restricted or is under the 7% or the 3%. That's how I see it. So each country must have a strategy as to which item does it want to take advantage of, and that way you can then prevent dumping, for want of a better word. The other aspect about it is that the rules of origin has, I think, between 40 and 60% margin, depending on the type of goods. In other words, there must be proof that the local component of the item which is being exported or imported has a significant component coming from within the continent. So this and the standards which we've talked about, and also the dispute resolution, so that in case you are challenging it, there's a forum for you to go and make. One of the challenges why a lot of the RECs haven't succeeded is because of the lack of dispute resolution forum, which after solves. So having said all these things which will help fair trade and then the competition, which Harriet elaborated on. And again, if you look at regions like SADC, they've so much advanced with the competition that the rest of us can learn from it. And Harriet clearly elucidated on that. But there are the parts which we often overlook. And let me just illustrate with one point. The average product you see in your hand, which is traded, has certain components. Cost of capital that enables me to develop that product will make the product price high or low. Kenya, at the moment, you can, on the average, take a loan at 12% interest on the Kenyan shilling per annum. Notwithstanding Ghana's drop of the monetary policy rate to 13.5, the average lending rate is around 21, 22. In other words, if an item is produced from Kenya and is produced from Ghana, and we were both selling it within the AfTA zone, and it's all within the goods of basket of goods, and there is no tariff, save for transport costs, that of Kenya is likely to be cheaper than that of Ghana. Another example is the cost of power. Ghana, the average cost of power is between 13 to 19 cents per kilowatt hour. That in Addis Ababa is 6 cents per kilowatt hour. Now, power is 30% on the average or the cost of an item produced. So the goods in Addis Ababa is likely to trade cheaper in Ghana than that made in Ghana. So for me, the issue goes beyond dumping. Dumping may be coming from extra Africa, and there's a lot that collectively we can do to prevent it. Especially, we should target imports from certain countries in the world which easily dump. But that aside, within the intra-Africa zone itself, in a $1.2 billion market, if our countries do not look at the factors that affect the cost of products, they may not become competitive. And that's a different thing than dumping. And I thought these are things we should be thinking about.
All right. Thank you very much, David. So if you're just joining us at CebsarTalk today, we are looking at the African Continental Free Trade Agreement. We're looking at prospects, opportunities, and way forward. I'll read a few messages, and I would like Harriet and David to pay attention so that you respond to where you feel there's the need. So I'll start from the Zoom platform here. One from Grace says, This is awesome. Praise we all unite as Africans to see the good in this for us. The advocacy is critical to our platform to create awareness. Is there a way you want to expand the advocacy team to include other countries to get everyone on board? Sure, there would be a way for that. Grace also goes on to say that, moreover, I want AfCFTA to expedite the standardization process to make us sustainable in Africa. The platform of single negotiations mentioned by Harriet is crucial to get us out of perpetual imperialism of more advanced economic blocs. Unity is essential. Chief Grace Oluwate, MD, thank you very much. Grace will definitely contact you for your interest in the expansion. Now, I also want to add something that Oswald also said. I foresee a lot of breakdowns if these regional economy blocks are maintained, while we still keep maintaining a free intra-African trade. I think we need to first of all break intra-regional barriers. So what will be your take on that? Should we break this intra-regional barriers? Also, David already talked about the fact that he sees himself as an African. He calls himself an African from Ghana and not a Ghanaian from Africa. So do you think that we need to break these intra-regional barriers, which has been talked about here, the East African bloc, the West African bloc, and the likes? If I must not say I'm from Cameroon, then we have to accept that AfCFTA is a complex project because it's pushing to unite Africa first. Don't you think if Africa is united, there won't be no need of uniting economies? Can we unite Africa and get trade freely mobile? Great. So I'll read a few ones also from Facebook. One from Solomon says, thanks for this insightful discourse. My question is, what measures are being put in place to develop sophisticated forex and online purchases and payment system? So looking at cyber security here and fraud issues. Then AK Mens also says, David talks about standardization, what is going to entail and how is it going to be achieved? I know in East Africa, they are doing quite better in that regard. By using Ghana in West Africa, for instance, standards are lacking, move from market to market, and every market woman is using blah, 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 blah. So I think he's talking more about standardization. He goes on to say, how will cost of goods be facilitated? And in terms, I think this is also something that David actually talked about, the challenges in the cost of production, which could also give some countries leverage over the others. Solomon again asks, how does AfCFTA deal with the French-speaking countries who are tightly tied to their colonial master France? Houston Emmanuel says, so far the narrative about AfCFTA is all about trade and profit. What measures are there to check for standards on food products sustainable? So I think a lot has been said about standards and some of the few questions. I don't know, Harriet, you would want to go first. Which one would you want to talk about? Is it the breaking the intra-regional blocks, and how are we able to achieve standards to make sure that there's a level, that there's a fair play?
Okay, so as I'll take the breaking the intra-regional blocks. So for instance, if you look at, there could be, for instance, the Eastern Bloc where some countries are even involved in about 5 different RECs, you understand? And that is even impeding their own progress because each of the REC has its own policies that could be not in agreement with another REC. So that has to be, ironed out. All those has to be ironed out so that it can now be inculcated into the AfCFTA as well. So these are some of the challenges that that poses, and that is what AfCFTA has to really work on. In terms of standardization, one thing I always say is that challenges always brings what opportunities. So every country has its own standard. Knowing the standard of another country will also help the exporting country know what standards are accepted in A, B, or C, and that would actually bring the individual countries together to say, this is what we accept per this product. This is the grade of the product we expect to trade amongst ourselves. So out of a challenge comes an opportunity, and that's how I look at it.
Thank you very much, Harriet. So David, would you also love to touch on the breaking of this intra-regional block? And also, I think someone also asked about the security, internet security, how we are able to develop sophisticated forex and online payment systems into this. And of course, standards has also been picked up.
I mean, the issue Harriet raises on the REX is quite a serious one. I mean, there are about 15 of them And as she said, some are as many as 5. In fact, I was at a workshop where somebody counted a particular country which is involved in 6. And each of them just crisscrossing each other. The ultimate goal of AfTA is in the long run to have an Africa Customs Union, which would then make it unnecessary to have any REX altogether once you have an ultimate customs union. So I'm hoping that if we all rallied around AfTA, then it will make life easy. One of the things which I find very unfortunate, and again, is one of the things I tweet about every now and then, is why, notwithstanding AfTA, our leaders keep signing individual trade agreements. There are many of them. Ghana has signed one with Britain commencing 31st December. Kenya has signed a similar one with the US. Mauritius has signed one with India. So quite a number of them. I mean, everybody trying to sign. And I raised the issue that collectively, we are stronger than individual agreements. Much as I understand these individual agreements, one of the things Africans must understand and push our leaders for is that where we don't have strategy, we become part of somebody else's strategy. Let me just give you an example. When Britain exits the European Union and Brexit becomes a headache, they must find strategies to increase their trade. So they want to negotiate with America, and then they will want to negotiate as quickly with individual African countries as possible, because they are not waiting for AfTA for us to negotiate collectively. But if you look at all the AfTA negotiation documents and the policies, one of the major goals is that AfTA will be the basis where Africa will negotiate as one. So why can't we then accelerate the ability to negotiate as one, instead of each country wanting to negotiate with Britain alone because Britain had a strategy for Brexit? So we become part of the Brexit strategy instead of becoming people who are leading our AfTA strategy. And this is all over the continent that I think if we work that way and use AfTA to negotiate with other blocs as a collective, we will break the REX dominance very, very easily. Otherwise, it's very easy for EU to say, look, they are poor African countries. I will set aside $300 million for those who suffer from the AfTA, which is true. And that money is needed by the countries who cannot succeed. There will be budget shortfalls. There's no doubt about that. It's true. But is this better if we came together as AU and say, look, instead of negotiating with ECOWAS or EAC, let's negotiate with AU or AfTA as collective and let these negotiations be at the block? It's easier that way, or better that way, but we are not doing that. So,
but sorry, just to follow up on what you just said, what is preventing us from doing that? Why are we not able to negotiate as a bloc?
Let me say this, and I think I don't know how much you know about what some of us have done regarding the AfTA. Apart from my day job, I belong to an NGO called Afro Champions, whose goal have been to push the private sector to the center of the AfTA story, to the extent that one of our documents, which I co-authored, called the $1 Trillion Framework for Investment under AfTA, became an official resolution of the African Union heads of states at their February summit in 2020. In other words, if those of us who are private don't take active role to push our heads of states and our leaders, it will be life as usual or business as usual. So the private sector has got much more role to play. I mean, let's face it, trade is done by the private sector. It's done by the Harriers of this world. It's not done by politicians. So even though they are negotiating for us, I mean, in one of a meeting in Addis Ababa, I asked one negotiator from another country, whether he has set up a factory before or he has exported goods before. And he laughed, but he was negotiating for me and you. So I think private sector should really, really push. So if private sector pushes, governments listen. We are, at the end of the day, we are the ones who trade both goods and services. And for me, I won't go beyond that. It's very clear that the heads of states are well-intentioned. Otherwise, they wouldn't be pushing AfTA. But we should be pushing them much, much more from different angles. I think there was a question you asked about the payments.
Yeah.
There are several movements in that direction. The most significant is the one led by AfriExim and the West African Monetary Union, with a view to creating a payment platform that will facilitate payment across the continent. I know that has gone far. It has not been launched yet. But again, I'm a believer in using what we already have. Why can't the likes of MTN and M-Pesa, who already having digital payments, enable cross-border payments? All that they need to do is to work with other payment platforms that are able to link the various exchange centers. Why can't these be negotiating with the central banks of Africa? Collectively, the central banks of Africa hold $400 billion in assets, more than half of which is held offshore. It's easy for us to talk about that of the Francophone countries and how all of it is indexed in France. That's fine. But what about the remaining? What about the global English? To what extent can we be the yardstick by which to move forward? Again, all these things will happen if you and I, as private sector associations, as businesses, constantly keep talking about these things and drawing our the heads of state's attention and negotiations' attention that this is what we want. It is for us. It is not for them.
Interesting. Thank you very much. I think I would still read some messages from our platform here, and maybe also go to Facebook, read 2 more, then I will take your thoughts again. So again, from Oswald, thanks so much for your questions. Thank you so much, Mr. David. Now, how can AfCFTA have competence when nations run to negotiate as one? How is African Union addressing this issue? Like I said, there's much. We must dissolve these regional blocks and at the same time stop individual national negotiations to give AfCFTA its critical values. I think in a way you touched on that already. Albert is also asking about the cost of travel in the continent. Is very important for me, please. Is it something that is also being considered in AfCFTA? Then again, back to standards. Oswald again is asking, we cannot think of a free trade when we are not sure of the quality of goods we provide. What are some of the solutions to the many barriers which AfCFTA must overcome for its implementation, seeing much well that the African Standard Organization must be established and ratified first before? So it's still around trade. So 2 things. What's the way around it? Issues around standards of goods that will be produced in different African countries. And then another person is also asking about the cost of transportation. We know it's quite expensive to travel across Africa. Are these things being considered, and what's the way around it? Maybe Harriet, you would want to go first.
Okay. I think with the standardization question, it has been already addressed.
True.
With infrastructure, you see, lack of infrastructure is what drives the cost up, right? So we need that kind of infrastructure, as David previously alluded to. We need to actually drive that going forward, and that will actually reduce the cost of transportation of not only goods, but of human beings as well. So that is one of the main things that each and every block, whether it's SADC has done very well when it comes to infrastructure, whether it's road or it's rail. A lot of work has to be done within the West African bloc. So there's a lot of work to be done. And once that is done, and we have that kind of intra-regional connectivity, that will possibly drive down the cost of transportation.
Thank you.
Let me add this, Evans. Again, let us remember that we should start with what we already have. We shouldn't wait for the big things. But having said that, the transportation question, there are 3 angles of it. One is the land question, which is a matter of road and rail. Currently, Cote d'Ivoire to Burkina Faso, there is an interconnection already. Djibouti to Ethiopia already has a railway connecting the countries. Hopefully, it will be extended. So that's that. On the land side, the rail is gradually being done. A lot of them have been planned. The road have already elaborated a lot of the network that PIDA is already planning. The question is taking these things to the market and making them bankable, because governments don't have the money, especially after COVID. making them bankable, that such rules can be told, and then they can, and there's an example in Southern Africa that I have been involved in, that once the attempt to go to the market started, clearly it is even being oversubscribed. The readiness to fund projects are there if it is properly structured. So that's the land side. The other side, which is very, very significant, which is the biggest challenge when it comes to goods, is the sea side. 97% of all major cargo go by sea. A lot of passenger go by air. Now, the sea one, let me just illustrate, and it explains quite a lot of things. In maritime transport, there is something called a liner. A liner is simply a shipping line that operates from point to point on schedule. Just like if you want to fly to Ghana, you can fly British Airways at a scheduled time or KLM at a scheduled time, as separate from charter, where you charter the vessel and you fly at your own time. Now, we don't have liner vessels around the whole of Africa, between Africa and outside Africa. So typically, when Nigeria, again, let me use an example we are familiar with. When Nigeria banned import of rice from Benin, they did not ban import of rice from Ghana. If there was a liner vessel shipping rice from the port of Tema-Otakoradi to the port of Lagos or Port Harcourt, we could still have exported rice to Nigeria. But there is none like that. The only way you can ship any item to Lagos is to ship it to Europe, to the port of Dover, and bring it back to Lagos. That is why a ton of cargo from here, let's say pineapple, to Europe will cost you 90 cents per ton, but to ship it to Cameroon is $1.90. So it is more expensive to ship to Africa than it is to ship to Europe. Clearly, this is big business, and I'm aware that some shipping lines are already, because of AfCFTA, beginning to look at liner vessels that they are beginning to look at linking from port to port. So I think that problem will be solved in the next couple of years. The last one, which I think, even though it doesn't carry the biggest sort of goods, is also very significant, is the airline. Because people who ship goods travel by air to meet the goods, and the bill of lading and all the rest that you need to clear the goods come by air. If you notice, I talked earlier about the single air transport market, which is having its challenges. But we have the likes of Ethiopian Airlines, one of the world's most profitable airlines. You have Kenya. We have now upcoming and doing quite well Rwanda Airlines. These and then of course in West Africa we have ASKY, which is doing quite well. And even in Ghana we have our own AWA, all of them beginning to connect around the continent. If we sign the single air transport market agreement and we removed the need for bilaterals between one country to the other and have an open sky, it's easier for the airlines to grow because the market will become bigger. And we do travel. It will bring down the price of air travel. We do have an open skies agreement, for example, with the United States, if I take Ghana. So it is easier or cheaper rather to fly across the continent because of the open sky agreement than it is to go to Abuja from Ghana. At the same $1,000 can take me across the Atlantic to America. So we need to hurry up with the single air transport market, and I think it will drop the prices.
Interesting. Thank you. Thank you very much, David. I also had a few questions, but I think I would give preference to our participants here. So again, from Oswald, he says not to forget how it's after addressing the value of currency. I was surprised to see how the value of Uganda currency was far less than the Cameroonian currency when we were to pay for an online training. Can't AfCFTA harmonize Africa's currency? Is it something that AfCFTA is also looking at just to, and then I read another one from AK Mensah says, what's the role of scientific research in upscaling the ideology of AfCFTA here? Any plans in human capital development and exchange of human capital among ourselves? For example, we should be seeing Ghanaian engineers building railways in, say, Kenya, South Africa, or Nigeria. So the currency issue, and of course, the role of research in upscaling AfCFTA. Harriet, what do you think is the way forward?
That's actually quite a complex one. I'll say, even let's look at the West Africa region. There's been a talk of having the eco currency trade between the West African countries. And unfortunately, we've had various challenges because to have a single currency, that means that the individual countries must also have achieved a certain standard, or when it comes to a certain standard of, economic indices. But that's where the challenge is, and that's where the individual countries have the responsibility of growing their economies to achieve those indices in order to homogenize it and have a single currency. Actually, we've come close to having the equal currency, but unfortunately, I'm aware France also had a little interference with the French West African countries, where they also adopted to use the equal to replace the safer. So there's a lot of hindrances along the way, but until we are able to even solve that for a bloc, getting the whole continent to use one currency will be quite tough. And that's one challenge that we have to look at.
All right, thank you very much.
I think on that, on the currency issue, what AfCFTA is trying to do with the West African Monetary Union is to first start with the dollar and ease it into certain significant African currencies. There have been all kinds of suggestions from different people. One of them is to have, let's say, a collection of 5 top African currencies into a basket and use them as more or less the way the dollar, the pound, the yen, and the euro is used. All these are being evolved, but I think eventually there will be that solution where that is the aim of the AfTA and the AfCFTA payment system. The aim is simply wherever you buy, wherever you export, you get your currency. So if, for example, you imported my goods into Egypt, the payment system pays you in cedi right in Ghana. But if we do that, the challenge Harriet raised then becomes the next challenge, which is the currency mismatch when one currency is stronger than the other. Again, that's quite a complex issue regarding economics and central banks, and also convergence criteria of various economies and how they manage their economies. But I think gradually these problems will be solved. Yeah.
Hopefully. Thank you very much, David. Thank you very much, Harriet. So I'll just read one last message from Facebook. Aminus says, how can the continent make good use of intermodal transport in facilitating AfTA? I think this has been addressed by David already. So our time is really fast spent. We have just about 10 more minutes. So what I'll do is that I'll ask our participants here, those of you who have questions that could not type them or would want to ask further questions, Harriet and David are here to answer your questions. Then I will later come to you to conclude for us with a question. So I don't know if there are any questions, any contributions. Okay, Edmond.
Thank you very much, Evans. I have a question, and I was listening to one session where they were explaining the AfTA I think in Ghana, and one of the participants, who happens to be one very big company in Ghana, CebsarTalk company that manufactures alcoholic beverages, said they wanted to take advantage of AfTA when it came, and then they shipped their drinks to South Africa, only to know that it had not been properly implemented in South Africa. So their goods were kind of held back until they had to bring the goods back. So my question is, how ready are these countries? I mean, we know they've ratified it. We know we are all talking about it, but it looks like in reality, it's not working. So how soon should we expect it to work? Like, if I'm a young businessman, how soon should I know now I can send my products to Gabon without facing similar challenge? Because if you don't have that financial strength, then your business is going to crash. I mean, CebsarTalk is a big company and they could afford the loss. But I'm just thinking if a small company should take this risk and then face this problem. So I want to know from David, like, how soon? Is it just a talk or in reality happening?
Yeah, even as I was actually eager to respond to that CebsarTalk question. I'm familiar with what happened. And it's true. However, I think a couple of things are important to mention. One is the fact that CASAPRECO's shipment was on 4th January 2021. Originally, AfTA was to start in January 20. In terms of trading, the first symbolic trading was to start in January 2021. It did not happen because of COVID, and then it was shifted to July. July 1st, I think it didn't happen. July 4th was a Monday, and that symbolic trade happened between Ghana and South Africa, where the shipment form, etc., was signed and everything, and then subsequently we heard this CASAPRECO story. So I want to emphasize that there was a symbolism, and maybe that challenge was faced. It doesn't mean it will always be the case. What it means is that there are lessons to be learned, and these are lessons that we all learn. So much as I grant that, we need to learn from it, and hopefully the Secretariat and all those people working on it to solve that problem. But having said that, I think the misconception, which I never get tired of trying to address, AfTA is not for big companies. It's not for big companies alone. Everybody has a role to play. I am not a big company. I've already told you that my firm is in 6 countries. You cannot, for example, set up in another country without speaking to a professional. And those who take advantage of AfTA early are like the parable of the 10 virgins that I keep talking about. They are the ones who make the early gain. And let's go back to CASAPRECO. CASAPRECO is already very, very successful in Nigeria. I mean, I travel across the continent a lot. Alomo Bitters is all over Lagos. It's already known. Now, if AfTA becomes fully operational and you drop the tariff, what will happen is that CASAPRECO's market in Nigeria will grow much more because it's going to be cheaper. So it is better when AfTA is having challenges to actually start trading across the continent and letting your products be known than to wait for the problems to be solved. Having said that, small companies have a big role to play. You supply the inputs, there is the value chain, you can aggregate your products, and that I have been talking over and over about the need for aggregators. And I like to use simple examples. Let me use the example I use and people laugh. Akpeteshi. These days, people bottle Akpeteshi and they call it Tapio, nicely branded products. If you get people drinking that product across the African continent, by the time the tariff is dropped, that product is known and it will compete with any product from the rest of the world. That's what we need to be doing. We should not be waiting for AfTA we were trading before AfTA. Let us understand that.
All right, that's a good one there. I can't wait to see Akpeteshi competing with vodka and the likes. You know, I think it would be great. But still, maybe just to still come back to what Edmond asked, maybe just to simplify it again. So because you said something that it appears AfTA is not fully operationalized yet, and I agree with you. Yes, before AfTA we were already trading amongst ourselves. So what's the situation now? At what point can I say that, okay, I've produced A goods and so I'm taking it to Nigeria to sell, I'm taking it to Kenya to sell? Is this the reality now?
Yes, AfTA is operational, but not fully operational because some of the protocols are still being negotiated. But I always want to distinguish talking to public sector from talking to private sector. If you are in the public sector, what I have to do is to push you to hurry up with negotiations. If you are in the private sector, what I will tell you is don't wait. Just start now and don't wait until AfTA is complete. Again, statistics help. Just 15 years ago, intra-Africa trade was only 3%. Before COVID, intra-Africa trade was 18%. There was no AfTA. Look at the data. It's already happening.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Harriet, I don't know whether you would want to, but first, KD, before Harriet, maybe our time is really fast. But KD, let's hear from you. I think KD.
Yeah, hi, thanks. I just saw a clip of Rawlings quite recently having a go at France to do with the ECO. Don't we have any thinkers that could think out of the box to have a solution to this, whereby the Anglophones could come out with a solution of trading and let go of France or the Francophones and then allow them to come on board later on. Because this clip that I saw is about 20 years back, when Rawlings was having a go at France with what they were doing with the ECO. Don't we have a solution? Don't you have policymakers that could think?
I mean, who is making the comment?
KD, you can address it.
Okay, so it's pathetic. We all know that, and we should not restrict the issue to only the France issue. The France artists were supplanted the ECO by Macron announcing that they were doing the ECO, and initially it sounded like a good thing. Then everybody realized it wasn't, because ECOWAS had said just a week or so before that they were going to do, a few weeks before they were going to do the ECO. But having said that, what has happened again? Last week, ECOWAS announced that they are postponing the single currency again, I think to 2027 or something like that. I mean, when I heard it, I just basically shut the radio. We've been talking about this since 1999. Yeah. ECOWAS was set up in 1975, and the single currency was one of its main goals. In fact, that was before the EU talked about bringing the single currency of the euro. And every time we said no convergence criteria, inflation, etc., and we keep postponing it. I believe that if intra-Africa trade begins to grow and people begin to trade, it may come to a point when the ECO will become irrelevant. Yeah. And also, because of the need to digitize our currencies, we must look at technology. The movement towards digitization is increasing. Technology may even overtake it. Let me put it that way. I think I would rather focus on trade than worry about 40-year postponement by heads of states each time when it comes to the ECO.
Thank you very much. I think I'll read one last message, then I take your concluding remark because of time. From Oswald again, he says, well, it's more of a question. Mr. David, how much will Africa pay for using the dollar? Is it better having a currency or paying for using a dollar? He goes on to say, I'm an advocate for a united Africa, and I think AfCFTA is a good initiative, but believe me, if we unite Africa, all other things will function as in a single nation. Thank you. So about the...
I agree. I agree. And using the dollar simply means that we are actually increasing the demand for somebody else's currency, which is the reason why I'm in support of Bank of Ghana's recent decision to buy gold and use the bullion as a back of its currency. I mean, I think collectively this continent produces the largest amount of gold. If we can come together and stop being confused by other people's strategies, probably we can begin to look at bringing together currencies of Egypt, Nigeria, Morocco, South Africa, the big boys, and then begin to see whether we can find a way without necessarily tying it to the ECO. There is a solution to that.
Yeah. Harriet, would you want to add your voice to it for just a minute or two before I allow Albert to say something, then I ask you to conclude for us, both of you.
Yeah, I agree very much with what David said. I don't agree to us using the dollar, really. As you said, why strengthen someone else's currency? Sure. So we have to, the solution must actually come from within. And this is for ourselves, this is Africa and Africa for ourselves. So we need to come up with a holistic approach with the currency, but not use someone else's currency, especially someone outside Africa. Yeah, that's what I'll say. Because at the end of the day, we also have to understand that we are not only trading amongst ourselves as intra-African trade, but we are also going to trade with the other continents as well. And we need to be in a better position when it comes to trade. So we need to find a solution right within ourselves.
Okay, yes, Albert.
You can hear me?
Yes, please go ahead.
Thank you so much for the wonderful presentations, and to all our audience for for their participation and their lively interactions, despite us being late. I make a comment or two. You know, the world is becoming a global village and Africa should catch up. And for Africa to catch up, we cannot sit by folding our arms and by sleeping on bed. We need to act. You know, for us to be able to act, I propose these few that I think are critical. One is internet. It's very important. And I think internet, just like when you are going to rent a house, they put in a bed or you have to take a bed and sleep on it. Internet should also be considered as part of the things that are just like water, because we cannot live without internet for us to be able to catch up. If there's no internet, then there's a problem. That is why we should ensure to universal internet coverage everywhere in Ghana, not only concentrated in Accra, but it should be uniformly spread out so that everybody will get access to internet, because it's very critical. The other thing is transportation. Look, Evans, me and you, we are in Germany. You can just take a bus, travel from here to Budapest. Take a bus, travel from here to Amsterdam. You know, I traveled to Amsterdam from where I stay, and it took me like 3 hours. And I went with a bus. I went to Switzerland, and I went with a bus, 12 hours, but I went.
All
the
right.
other thing that we need to take a look at, transportation is very important. Another thing is cost of traveling. Look, it costs more to travel within Africa than to travel from Europe to America. And also, you know, issues of visa and all that should be tackled. I was a PhD student in Tanzania, and I was made to pay all sort of money. You have to pay visa here, pay this. You know, we Africans, and I mean, we should be able to move freely within the continent without any wahala. The other thing I end here.
Yeah, great.
We need to take a look at standardization. Look, when you come to Europe, things are standardized regardless of where you are. I give an example by using a plug. Everywhere you go in Europe is 2-pin. I moved to Asia. At a point in time, I realized it was different. I was in England and it was 3-pin. You come to Ghana, for instance, you go to some place 3-pin, other places 2-pin, other places don't have pins, you know, and issues of measurement and all that. I think by now we should move from the use of olonka and all that in measuring things to standard ways of measuring things. And I end here by saying that research is very key for us to upscale the ideologies and the intent of AfCFTA. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Albert. You've become a guest all of a sudden, concluding for us anyway, but that was brilliant. So to conclude, Harriet and David, and I like the positivity that is being injected into us, particularly coming from Harriet and David. We are all hopeful, and like also David said, we should not wait. If you're a private actor, do not wait for countries to finish their ratification and start working, because there's an opportunity for this after. But moving forward, and also saying that indeed I have hope, we have hope that AfCFTA is going to work. What would you change or add to the current agreement to make it better, as your concluding remark, just briefly? So I'll start with you, Harriet. What would you want to add to this negotiations, this agreement, to make it better for all of us?
Okay, let me start off by just picking a few things Albert said in terms of internet connectivity. I mean, that is one area that is also a focus for the AfCFTA, because for a farmer in a village, you want the farmer to be as well connected to the bigger market as much as possible, not only in terms of road infrastructure to bring his goods to the cities or to the ports where maybe he needs to export his produce. So digitization is something I believe David even mentioned, and it's very, very important. And we need to really spearhead this. I think the individual countries, African countries, need to invest a lot into this and invest a lot into internet connectivity. Would I add anything? I think that the AfCFTA Secretariat and the bodies involved are well informed as the challenges that we already have. And also at the back of our minds, we understand the opportunities that this AfCFTA trade has presented to us. But I will come down to, as in Ghana, what can we do to maximize this opportunity? AfCFTA is here. David said that don't wait until everything is ratified, until everything is perfect before you take a step. Nothing will be perfect. I will have to state that. But then what do you do with what you have? The good thing for us in Ghana is that we have the Secretariat here. And what good will it pose for us in Ghana? Already they have employed people. So we are talking about employment, job creation right there, right? But then it has also positioned Ghana as the trade center, for the AfCFTA, meaning there's going to be an influx of people into the country. What does it mean for us? We have to look at real estate industry as well as the hospitality industry, transport industry, and all its associated value chains. And these are the areas that we need to look at and take maximum opportunity. Do not wait till 10 years time or 5 years time where people have already started taking advantage of it and you start scratching your head. We have to make the step now, we as individuals. And as we are applying ourselves to it and we come across challenges, we are able to give the feedback to the Secretariat so that they also look at it and see how they can refine the processes and all that.
Thank you very much, Harriet. David?
I will not exactly add, but two things need to be emphasized. They are implied in the AfCFTA and in the BIAT, but they are not standing out. But I think they need to be emphasized. One is the conscious creation of champions. We have to consciously promote certain companies and make sure that they become giants. That is what Japan did and created the Toyotas, the Mitsubishis of this world. That's what Korea did and created the Samsungs of this world. It has to be done consciously. It doesn't just happen by accident. And we shouldn't do it by picking political manufacturers and political exporters, but people who have already shown the way, the golden exotics, the Casaprecos of this world, who have already demonstrated. These are the tropical cables. If I'm taking Ghana as an example, these are the companies we need to push and turn them into industrial giants to be able to take advantage of the AfCFTA. That way, we will be achieving the goal. The second thing we need to do is specifically a massive education of SMEs regarding their role in AfCFTA. Because if you take, for example, any of the big companies I've talked about, the input supplies actually come from SMEs. And if I could be an SME in a typical village, Brahababumi village. I am not exporting anywhere. I don't need to know rules of origin, but I simply need to know that if I produce these goods according to a certain standard, that I'm producing fits into what Casapreco or somebody else is exporting. Now, when we are promoting industry champions, we need to insist that they show us the value chain from the SMEs, that they take their inputs from the SMEs. And if we can educate the SMEs, then we will have the long integration and we will create the jobs that politicians promise, which they cannot deliver because the jobs must be created by private sector. And this is how we need to approach the AfCFTA.
Thank you very much. It's been so interactive, in fact, but I would read some last messages and then we'll sign off. One from Grace: I love that, stop being confused. So I'm reading some messages from our participants who are joining us via Zoom here. Hi, my name is Kofi. I'm a trade advocate and using the AfCFTA protocols to get your goods across Africa. You can get me via, this number is there. Can I please get the speaker's contact? I'm sure, yeah. So we'll do that. You can write to Albert. I think Albert has already shared his email address already on the platform here. So you can get in touch with Albert and then we'll connect you to David. If that's okay with you.
Oh, that's fine. That's fine.
Grace also says, find our own Africa for African strategy. We must unite and find lasting solution. The time is now. Please reach out to me on. Grace is also sharing his email address and phone number for collaborations. I'm also a young person looking to learn more about cross-border trade and firm believer. This is Prince Kelly, and after being a good catalyst for growth for African startups. Please, I would like to connect with so David again to volunteer some hours each week to learn and work on some projects. I think the
just for
message,
clarity, Evans, I correspond better with email than with any, so do share my email. Yeah.
All right, thank you very much. So if you just, so for those of you who want to connect with David, just send an email to CebsarAfrica, send an email to CebsarAfrica@gmail.com, and then we'll share his email address with you. If you want to connect with David or Harriet, we are happy to do so. So thank you very much. I say our fellow Sebsarians, thanks for making time with us. Those of you who joined via Zoom, those of you who sent in messages from Facebook, there are a lot of them I could not read, or Houston says, ask my last question on security. I still cannot find it. Sorry, Emmanuel. But this last one from Krobia Santikotoko. Professor Aki, internet connectivity is not much of a problem, but coverage. Coverage is how widespread the internet is, and connectivity refers to speed or measure of flow of traffic. Thanks for the education there. So thank you very much, Harriet and David, for such a wonderful education. Maybe producers, we can't do a part 2 of it because we could not even exhaust our questions, and there are a lot more questions coming in. But thank you very much for the spirit that we have. We think that we can let it happen, and so we should take advantage of after. Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you. And continue the good work.
Great. And I'm Evans Apia Kisi. So hopefully next week we'll bring you another interesting discussion on CebsarTalk. Bye-bye.